Good morning, everyone. Call the meeting to order and ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Regent Bartell. Here. Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Burmaster. Regent Conley Kiesler. Regent Crane. Regent Keene. Regent Davis. Regent Drew. Regent Falbo. Regent Loftus. Regent Opgenarth. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Smith. Regent Spector. Regent Thomas. Regent Vasquez. Regent Walsh. Regent Womack.
Thank you. The minutes of our August 21 and 22 meeting have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, would I have a motion for approval? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. You received the written report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board. Any questions or comments on that report? Regents Keene, Burmaster, Smith, and Vasquez are members on that board. Well, I would like to thank our wonderful host for this day and a half of meeting. I also want to thank the many, many students who contributed their time to welcoming us and also making our stay here very enjoyable. We had an opportunity yesterday to not only taste some fine food at noon, but also see some of the important work that students on this campus are doing. Since we last met, President Riley and I made our seasonal trip to visit the Wisconsin congressional delegation. And despite the members of Congress being very much involved in what at that time they thought was trying to resolve the financial crisis, and as it turns out, they were just getting their feet wet in the financial crisis. But some of them had bags under their eyes. They were putting in some long hours trying to resolve it. But they still took time to visit us, and I was very impressed with the knowledge that members of the congressional delegation had about the campuses in their districts. We shared a letter with each member of the congressional delegation that was signed by Kevin, me, and by all of the chancellors, advocating their support for funding of the America Competes Act. This act was approved by Congress, and it is an act that would call for significant funding in science and technology, and a number of our campuses would figure prominently. The problem, though, even though the bill was passed, there were no funds authorized for it. So we advocated to each member of the delegation the importance of authorizing and appropriating the funds for it. Especially with the members of the delegation from southeastern Wisconsin, we were talking about the impact of the closing of the General Motors plant in Janesville. They were very much aware of this, and they were also aware of some of the efforts that our campuses, especially UW-Rock, had taken after this plant closing was announced. All in all, we had very constructive conversations, I think. As I mentioned, it was impressive that the members certainly knew about UW system issues in general, and they certainly were aware of what was going on in the campuses in their districts. In our visit with Senator Feingold, we particularly were talking about his interest in water issues in the state of Wisconsin, and we were joined in that meeting by Chancellor Santiago in talking about additional ways that UW-Milwaukee can participate in water science issues. And He had been on the campus and had more work with the campus scheduled as part of his interest in water issues. We met with Congressman Obey, who happens to represent the district in which Stevens Point is located, the 7th District. I extended to Congressman Obey an invitation to address the Board of Regents. He has a long history of interest and concern about the direction of higher education as a public good in our society, and he said that he would look forward.
Now we have one that's on. Oh, good. He said that he would look forward to the opportunity to join us, and Chris Andrews, our federal liaison, is working with Congressman Obey's staff to see if we can get that scheduled in for our part of our November meeting or our February meeting. I think these face-to-face meetings, although brief, are very much worth the effort, and they keep this relationship building going on the federal level, and as you know, we've done the same thing on the state level, and every little part of the broader effort, I think, produces results to just keep the lines of communication open and keep spreading our message of what we're trying to achieve for the state of Wisconsin. You may have seen the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, this nonpartisan state budget watchdog, recently released a report stating that we in Wisconsin lag behind all other states except one for providing funding increases in higher education, and they measured this over the period of the last 5 years. And you also might have seen in response the editorial that was in the Wisconsin State Journal this past weekend, where they were talking or urging the state not to, as they put it, skimp on higher education. They went on to say, and I quote, "Budget constraints demand that Wisconsin control spending. But if the state is to enjoy the growth that generates jobs, boosts incomes, and pours revenue into government budgets, it cannot let its support for higher education continue to sag." So hopefully our message has traction. We certainly know that it has traction among the business community in Wisconsin, and the test of that is Kevin's thick three-ring binders, where he has kept all of the letters of support that have come in our first go-around with the Growth Agenda, and now, if you want to call it Growth Agenda 2, and those letters of support continue to come in. The business communities that need the employees with the higher order skills in this knowledge economy certainly get it. And we need to continue spreading the message to the ultimate decision makers that will provide us the funding for what we're trying to do for Wisconsin. Looking ahead, I just wanted to remind you that our November meeting is one of our policy discussion meetings. We're going to have our in-depth discussion of the graying of the faculty, the problems with our academic workforce recruitment and retention. As I mentioned last time, this is an increasingly relevant topic as over 50% of our UW system faculty and instructional staff are 50 years and older. And connecting the dots, that means in future years we can expect significant departures from our faculty and staff due to retirements. So we'll have all the data to walk us through that, and we're also going to have comments from leaders at system institutions who can give us firsthand accounts of what's going on at their campuses. And then also on the agenda for November, we're going to discuss what I think is a very interesting issue, and that is the professional doctorates. You heard yesterday that UW Stevens Point now has doctorates in these professional areas. These are not the research-based PhDs that we're accustomed to, but this whole issue of the comprehensives being able to meet student needs by offering the professional doctorates is one that we can sink our teeth into in the afternoon of November. That is all that I have on my report, So I'll now turn it over to President Riley.
Well, thank you, President Bradley, and I wanted to add my thanks to yours for the wonderful hospitality that Chancellor Brunel and her colleagues have shown us. I thought the Leading from the Center Luncheon Festival was a particularly wonderful idea, where we got to meet with faculty and staff and the students working with them on a variety of really interesting projects. Just a great idea, and it's been a great 2 days generally. Thank you, Linda. And I wanted to thank President Bradley for that update on our federal government relations, especially. It was a good trip, I think, down to D.C. On a related note, back here at home, I wanted to let the board know about what we're doing. That is, we are in the process of sending letters to all state legislative candidates for the fall elections, both incumbents and those who are challenging them, briefing them on key facts about the UW system. The letter includes information about the growth agenda, directs them to specific additional information about initiatives in their districts or the districts they're running to be elected from. So just as important, we've got information in there about our efforts to be as lean and cost efficient as we possibly can, keep the overhead down. There's information there about our efforts to be accessible and affordable as a public university system generally, and a path to a quality higher education for their constituents. So we'll hopefully have a good reaction to that effort. I wanted to turn now to one of our regular updates on the growth agenda action steps. To do that, I've invited Senior Vice President Rebecca Martin to say a few words about it. Let me first say that Rebecca and I meet regularly on the issue of how are we moving forward with those 11 action steps that came out of our strategic planning process, and I'm more and more excited each time I meet with her about the commitment and intelligence and energy that colleagues from all over the system who have been working with her on these steps are bringing to the project. So we're excited that they're moving forward, and I wanted to give Rebecca a chance to talk a little bit about a few of them. Rebecca.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to report again that we've made considerable progress on a number of these action steps, and there is an update in your packets, and when you have a chance to look at that, you'll see that in a number of cases we are beginning to put funding behind these efforts, both through external grants that we have either been able to obtain directly or where we are participating with partner institutions or organizations nationally in these arenas. We also have taken a number of them to expand to a more statewide scope in terms of the way we're approaching these, working with the Wisconsin Technical Colleges, with DPI, and in some cases with the independent higher education institutions. So this still is very much our Advantage Wisconsin project, but we really are trying to look at it from a statewide perspective in a number of ways. As has been my practice, we're going to focus on just a couple of these today, very briefly, to give you a flavor of the work that's going on. The first one that we'd like to talk about is expand the UW Connections programs. And I'm really pleased to tell you that this is the first one where we can declare success. We've completed this effort, and we had a presentation yesterday from people from the Madison Connections program in the Education Committee, and I'll turn to Regent Davis to give us a few of those details.
Thank you, Senior Vice President Martin. The Education Committee enjoyed a presentation yesterday on the UW-Madison Connections program and its expansion through the growth agenda. And many of us are aware that UW-Madison is not able to accommodate all of the academically strong students who currently apply for admission at that campus, and we hear about that all the time. The UW-Madison Connections program was developed to address the pressure on freshman enrollment at Madison. The Connections program is a dual admission program between UW-Madison and specific partner institutions. Selected UW-Madison freshman applicants who are Wisconsin residents are offered participation in the Connections program as an alternative to freshman enrollment at UW-Madison. These applicants are academically qualified for UW-Madison admission, but are not admitted directly because of space limitations in the freshman class. UW-Madison piloted the Connections program in 2001 in partnership with 4 UW College campuses. Over time, it's been expanded to include all 13 UW colleges, 3 Wisconsin Technical Colleges, and the College of Menominee Nation. The growth agenda set the goal to expand the program further to include any of the UW comprehensive institutions that wanted to participate. The goal has now been accomplished, and the action step is complete. Yay! Okay. Beginning this fall, UW Green Bay is participating, and 4 additional comprehensive campuses plan to participate in fall 2009, and they are UW Parkside, River Falls, Stevens Point, and Stout. This is a promising way to ensure that Wisconsin will enroll more of its best students and graduate them with the baccalaureate degrees, as well as enhance access to the sought-after Madison campus. So we commend ourselves, and we should, for having accomplished one of our goals.
Thank you. The other goal that I wanted to provide you with some update on is the new Wisconsin Idea Public Policy Forums. There was some very important framing for this initiative and the larger core strategy of stronger communities at a Wingspread conference last weekend, sponsored by the UW Colleges and Extension, that was entitled Rethinking the Civic Mission of Public Higher Education in Wisconsin. I know that several regents were there. I participated, as did a number of others in this room, and I thought I would just give Chancellor Wilson a moment to say a few things about this.
Thank you very much, Vice President Martin. Last weekend, 40 state leaders, including legislators, regents, K-12 educators, representatives from the higher education community, including our technical colleges, our independent colleges, UW system chancellors, administrators, and our tribal colleges, regents, senior CEOs from corporations around the state gathered at Wingspread Friday and Saturday of last week under the umbrella of the UW Colleges and UW Extension, but an effort really led by the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, which is headquartered on the UW Marathon campus and very ably led by Professor Eric Giordano. Our task over the weekend was to explore the civic mission of the public university. These 40 individuals engaged in intense dialogue and conversation during that particular gathering. We had a number of questions before us, questions such as, what should be the vision for civic engagement for the public university going forward? How do we ensure that we are producing in our graduates good citizens who are going to be active participants in our local communities wherever they live and work when they leave us? What should be the guiding principles for all of our campuses and our statewide UW Extension as we seek to renew a very potent and powerful concept, the Wisconsin Idea, and make sure that the Wisconsin Idea is indeed as potent and powerful in the next 25 years as it has been in the last 100 years or so. During the course of the weekend, this was a high-level dialogue and discussion, as you can imagine. Wingspread really worked with us very, very closely to ensure that at the end of this particular weekend, we would have a product that we could be proud of, that could serve as a national model in how civic engagement across higher education actually should take shape. It is our intent to produce a report that would certainly come out under the aegis of Wingspread. That report will address the question of what is our vision for the UW system institutions going forward in the area of civic engagement, and what should be our guiding principles. We also will have in that report some of the wonderful examples that are taking place on our campuses across the UW. And we will present that to System President Riley for additional discussion and dialogue, and then hopefully on to you for additional discussion and dialogue, as our intent is to produce for the campuses and statewide UW Extension a hefty dialogue around renewing the covenant that the state has had with the UW, and to make sure that as we go forward, as I said, that the Wisconsin Idea is indeed relevant, powerful, and will guide us in the next quarter century. I'm more than happy to address any questions you have, and thank you very much, Vice President Martin.
So the public policy forums will grow out of the work that we did at Wingspread last weekend, and indeed all three of the institutions that have stepped up and said that they will sponsor the first set of forums, UW-Eau Claire, UW-Madison, and the UW Colleges Extension were well represented, and we talked a number of times over the course of the weekend about, you know, what we were hearing and what we were saying and how the public policy forums would fit. We are still hoping that the first one will take place in the spring of 2009, but it remains to be seen whether we can really get the planning far enough along to be sure that we have a good, solid program that warrants people's time. So we'll have more to say about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Martin and Regent Davis and Chancellor Wilson. Any questions at this point for any of our speakers? I think we're making good progress on these action steps. Yes, Regent Burmaster.
Is Campus Compact involved in the
Yes.
second date? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. A word about Higher Education Day. I wanted to remind you that next Tuesday, October 7th, is this year's Higher Education Day. As you may know, this day is an opportunity for all the educational institutions in Wisconsin to assist our students in focusing on life goals and the role that education plays in meeting them. It's the third year that Wisconsin's governor, the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, the state treasurer, and the superintendent of public instruction, who moonlights as Regent Burmaster, have collaborated for this important celebration of post-secondary education. Every day our students, staff, and campus leaders are actively engaged in trying to spread the word throughout local communities about the value of a college education. Key message for the growth agenda if we're to be successful there, obviously. Higher Education Day is an additional tool to continue this important work. In the past, UW's involvement has included a variety of opportunities for students, families, and state leaders to visit our campuses. Last year, our financial aid offices, for instance, held open houses to help individuals better navigate the complex topics of financial aid and tuition. This time around, we're aiming to have an even bigger role in Higher Education Day. For the first time, the Know How to Go campaign will be actively participating in the Higher Education Day activities. Know How to Go is partnering with EdVest, that's the state's 529 college savings program, to present a video contest for Wisconsin students in grades 7 through 10. The students will create their own videos dramatizing one of the 4 Know How to Go steps to college. That is, 1, be a pain and let everyone know of your intention to go to college. Now, that will be a popular one, I predict, for the video topic. Number 2, push yourself. Number 3, find the right fit. And number 4, get your hands on some cash. Winners of the contest will receive EdVest scholarships. We've also joined with our Higher Ed Day partners to produce a PowerPoint presentation about higher education opportunities in Wisconsin that can be used by school guidance counselors and around the state in their conversations with students and families. And this presentation not only provides information about Wisconsin's post-secondary institutions, but also gives a general overview of what students need to do to succeed in achieving their college dreams. And that presentation, after Higher Ed Day on Tuesday, will be available on the State Treasurer's Higher Education Day website. So those are just a few of the examples of UW System's involvement in this Higher Ed Day, and I think it illustrates another way that we're working with our colleagues in the schools and our colleagues in state government to make the growth agenda real. New faces. I had a couple new faces to introduce to you today, several newcomers to the UW family. First, we have Dr. Christine Quinn, who is the new Provost and Vice Chancellor for UW Extension. Christine is over there. Welcome. Christine comes to us from Minnesota, where she served as the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at Winona State University. She's got a good head start on knowing her way around Madison, though. She earned both her undergraduate and master's degrees in education and vocational rehabilitation from UW-Madison before heading to the University of Minnesota for her PhD. Christine has more than 20 years of experience in public higher education, including several years as a faculty member and department chair at UW-Stout. So this is indeed a kind of homecoming for her. So we're delighted to have her. Christine, I think, knows that I was hired as the provost at Extension to come to Wisconsin 12 years ago, so I hope Chancellor Wilson has told you that when this board decides to send me back, I may have to bump you, but hopefully that won't happen too soon. You're right. Also joining us this week, and I don't know if he's here, is Dr. Stephen Collison. There, yes. Dr. Collison is the system's new Associate Vice President for Academic and Faculty Programs, assuming the position that was most recently held by Ron Singer. Stephen brings more than 17 years of experience as an administrator and faculty member to the position. He was most recently the Dean and Research Director for the Institute of Agricultural and Environmental Research at Tennessee State University. Stephen earned his doctorate in forest economics from Iowa State University, and having completed his undergraduate degree at the University of Liberia. In his new role, Stephen will be providing leadership and support in the planning, development, and review of academic and research efforts in the UW system. So welcome to Wisconsin, Stephen. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Walter Zakahi, who's over on that side of the room. Walter is an ACE, American Council on Education, Leadership Fellow with my office this semester. The ACE Leadership Development Program is one of the oldest and most respected and most successful in the country, and we were delighted that Walter, who in his real life is the Associate Dean for in the College of Arts and Sciences at New Mexico State, we were delighted that he chose to spend his fellowship with us. He's working on issues about how systems operate, diversity and equity issues that related to a Ford Foundation project, which I'll mention in a few minutes. So I wanted to welcome him and say we're delighted to have him working with us. I did think of, in both Stephen's case and Walter's, when they woke up this morning and saw that there was frost on the pumpkin on October 3rd, they knew they weren't in Tennessee or New Mexico anymore. I wanted to talk to you a little bit this morning about the reports I recently released about our UW system Chancellor Search and Screen process. To provide a little historical overview here, on July 1, shortly after the failed search for a chancellor at UW Parkside, I announced that we would undertake a detailed review of the procedures used to recruit, screen, and select chancellor candidates, and that the results of this review would then be used to consider improvements in the process. To lead the review, we engaged Dr. Stephen Porch, Chancellor Emeritus of the University System of Georgia, and an 18-year veteran of our own UW system. Steve served here as the Senior VP for Academic Affairs at the system, Chancellor of the UW Colleges, and Professor of English. So he brought very valuable experience to the task, not only here in Wisconsin, but through his extensive work in helping to manage high-level academic searches in Georgia and elsewhere around the country. As you know, Dr. Porch has completed his review, and we provided you with the 2 written reports last week with his suggestions, and this morning I'd like to follow up on that by getting your advice about his suggestions and recommendations and about my initial reaction to them, which you saw in the cover letter that I sent out with the reports. Just a couple ways of framing this, thinking about it. Dr. Porch offers several ways that I think we can improve our reference checking process to obtain the most accurate picture of each finalist. One suggestion is that the UW system president and members of the Board of Regents visit the home campus of lead candidates to conduct scheduled and perhaps unscheduled interviews. This is an interesting proposal, would present several challenges, I think, not the least of which would be the cost in both time and money. On one hand, conducting multiple visits to other universities could provide deeper insights, certainly, than you can obtain via a telephone interview, for instance, with references. On the other hand, we would need to assess how this intensive scrutiny might discourage some qualified candidates, especially perhaps sitting chancellors and sitting presidents at other institutions, from becoming candidates in Wisconsin. There's been some concern voiced, for example, that as word comes out that visits are planned to a particular candidate's institution, other candidates in the finalist pool might withdraw from the search rather than perhaps being perceived as the second choice, the avis in the hunt. Dr. Porch also offered some suggestions relating to clarifying the roles and responsibilities for external search consultants. These are the external firms we hire to assist us with our chancellor searches. Some ideas about expanding those roles during each phase of the selection process. Consistent involvement by the external search firm during the final phases of the selection process, a practice already used in some of our past searches, would ensure that UW system leaders fully benefit from this outside experience. By more clearly spelling out which reference checks are to be performed by the campus search committee, by the external consultant, and by the UW system president, and how that information is shared with others, we can make it more likely that any information gaps that might be there will be closed or at least narrowed. On a related issue, Dr. Porch suggests that the external search consultant be selected jointly through a process that involves the chair of the Regent Special Committee, the UW System President, and the faculty chair of the institution search committee. And I, without objection from you, will say we'll just do that. I think it's wise. Together with more explicit written guidelines concerning the principal duties and responsibilities of our external search consultants, this joint selection process will clarify both the lines of communication and the lines of accountability for our outside experts, again, helping ensure that information is shared appropriately with all of the key decision makers. Another interesting idea presented by Dr. Porch is the notion of a blended committee, one that would combine membership from the currently separate campus and regent committees that work on our chancellor searches. Board policy, as it's currently written in 6.4, directs the system president to appoint an institutional, a campus search and screen committee with majority faculty membership. This means that a blended committee with regent membership could become quite large, and our committees, as I think you all know, are running 22, 23, 24 people already. Regent involvement at the recruitment and screening phases of each search would also require a significantly larger time commitment from board members compared to serving only on the Regent Special Committee to review the slate of finalists, which is the way we run the process now, as you know. Finally, Dr. Porch suggests that we consider adding a quote, relatively high-level position in the President's office to oversee all chancellor searches, noting that some other university systems have created such positions. An alternative would be to employ a second consultant, in effect, in addition to the search firm, as a kind of owner's representative, Dr. Porch's words in the process. I don't know. My initial reaction is that I don't know that we could justify the cost of a high-level position in my office dedicated to managing chancellor searches. The stakes in these searches, though, are already so high that I would like to explore additional ways to gain more regular hands-on oversight and information exchange throughout the process. In my letter to you on this subject, I appended several attachments, including Regent Policy 6.4, which I just alluded to. That document is before you with no edits or amendments in it. Indeed, for any edits or amendments to happen, you would have to approve it because that is your board policy as it stands now. Other attachments to my letter and to Steve's reports, all administrative procedures related to the chancellor's search process, I did provide to you with edits and amendments based on Dr. Porch's recommendations in italics, so you could see what he was suggesting we do where and how that those might be added right into our administrative guidelines. So my intent is to incorporate those changes right away, unless you advise me not to today, unless you're uncomfortable with any of them. As I mentioned in my letter to you, I think it's worth noting that Dr. Porch states, quote, the UW system policies and procedures are sound, thorough, and specific. However, the changing search environment suggests some revisions may be helpful and timely. I agree, and I would like to make the changes indicated in italics in those administrative guidelines and consider some of the others that I just ticked off as options after I hear what you think of them. But that's why I need your counsel now. I have asked, by the way, the chancellors almost all of whom, by virtue of their being there, have had some experience in chancellor search procedures and processes to join in this discussion, because I think they can really help us think through some of this. A couple of the questions that I put on the table are you comfortable with the revisions indicated in italics in the guidelines? What do you think about the more far-reaching suggestions, such as visiting candidates' campuses, the blended search committee, a staff person in my office dedicated to chancellor searches? So the floor is open, and I look forward to a good discussion and good counsel from you on this. Regent Crane. Yes, I believe it was. We just wanted to make sure that for this discussion, you had it in front of you if you hadn't brought it with you. Regent Davis.
I have a question on. I looked at his report, and I don't understand what his rationale, what gets better if that were done. I know that he cites examples of where it is in practice, but what I don't understand, and I would love for you to elaborate on, is what do we gain by having a blended approach as opposed to the two-step that we have currently?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that, and others may want to jump in as well. I think the idea is that early on, if you have a blended committee, all of the perspectives are at the table in looking at the initial set of applicants that you get in. The way it works now with the separate committees, the Regent perspective really doesn't get in to the mix directly until there are 5 finalists recommended to the Regent Select Committee and me, and we say, okay, these are the 5 we'll go with. One of the advantages of a blended committee is that the Regent perspective on what that institution needs in a chancellor would be a stronger part of the dialogue right from the beginning, looking at the initial applicants that come in, not just later in the process. I think that's the kind of advantage that Steve was seeing in that sort of a blended committee.
The record, just to follow up, if I may, isn't that the intent of the initial, whatever we call that, charging meeting, where we meet, and all of that special Regent committee is invited to participate in that first initial meeting with the campus committee to do exactly that, I thought.
Yes, and I think that is the purpose of that meeting. I think Steve's thought was he recognized that we did have that meeting, and we used it, at least in part, for that purpose. On the other hand, I think his thought was sometimes over the course of a long series of meetings and months, some of that perspective gets lost in the process, and you don't get it back again until the finalists are recommended. Now, Regent Falbo.
I think as it pertains to just the point that Danae's bringing up, I think part of that is, as Kevin said, the Regent Committee gets the opportunity to meet the finalists in a very, very short time frame. I think one of the advantages of a blended committee is you would be going through the whole process, and I think it's a very good process of candidates and what they go through at the campus, all the interviews they go through, the public interviews, the campus interviews. I found it, and I don't know about any of the other regents that have been on search committees, I found that I didn't feel capable of making a decision after spending about a half hour to 45 minutes with each candidate, one right after another, and then making a recommendation to the president who's our choice. I don't think we have enough background to make that decision. I think that's what he was referring to when he was talking about the blended committee, that I don't know if we'd still have a separate Regents committee of those same regents that were on the blended committee, but if we did and we sat down then, we'd have a lot more in-depth knowledge of the candidates to be able to make a more informed decision, hopefully.
Mike just referred to a question which is really unstated in Steve's report. That is, if you did have that blended committee, to whom would it make its initial recommendations? Would there be a Regent Special Committee? Would the recommendation from the blended committee go right to the full board? And again, advantages and disadvantages on all of these options, I think. Regent Crane.
On that particular point, and I do hear what Mike is saying, but I'm concerned about the number of regents that would then need to be added, it seemed to me, to the the Search and Screen Committee. I don't think one or two regents can carry that representation from the board, and in that case you increase the size of the committee, not only with regents but with all these other balancing, as I understand, that become part of that composition, and that has some real problems with it, it seems to me.
Regent Conley-Kiesler.
Searches. One not great success, and I don't want to overreact over one not great success when we have had great chancellors that we've hired. But being on those committees, this is the area where I think maybe it would help. Not maybe being on the Search and Screen from the beginning as a blended, but maybe going on campus when the chancellors are on campus for those couple days, and we just listen to how they're responding in those meetings. When Rick was hired in Oshkosh, obviously I wasn't on this board, but I was on some of those, as a community person, I was at those meetings, and the three finalists did get to hear them, although I didn't get to hear you.
That's why we hired him.
And you do get a different perspective at that point, yeah, at that point. So, that might be an option. I think another option on other searches I've been at is the opportunity to do a reference check when we make a call. Instead of, so you give us two people and each of the regions actually make a call on a reference so we can talk to the same people that the search committee is talking to. That might be another option versus actually getting on the committee from the very beginning and being there through all the process, because I think it's a good process when they can weed it down to the 12 finalists. We sit and talk about it, and then they get it down a little bit further instead of us feeling like we're taking control from point one. And I think all of your changes are absolutely fine.
Thank you. And that's a good point about the calls at the end. These are good ideas, and I like the notion of the regents making a point of attending the campus forums, and I know some have. Again, there have been instances where you all have. And one of Steve's recommendations, which again I think is a good one, is don't rush the end of the process. And if we had a little more time for regents to make some calls, that would be good. Now, practically speaking, when you get to that point, you're often in a situation where you want to move with some alacrity so you don't lose candidates. Some candidates are in other searches, and you know that, and you're negotiating to keep them in your pool. And the longer it takes you at that phase, the more likely you are to have candidates drop out. So again, as on all of these, there are advantages and disadvantages, and some of them are good ideas in concept, and you should apply them where you can. But in some instances, when you're in the thick of the hunt, you can't quite do it the way the concept would make most sense to have it done. Regent Vasquez.
I think what you just said right now makes sense in that I don't think that we should approach this as if we, among many things, we have to be rushing, we have to be moving quickly. For a variety of reasons. One of them is that I think we've got a good, robust system here where, first of all, at least my awareness is that we haven't had a situation where a chancellor says it's Friday, and by the way, Kevin, I'm leaving as of Monday, and hopefully you've got somebody on Tuesday. I mean, the system doesn't operate that way. There's a lot of leeway on all sides, everything from you being given notice to when we need to have someone there. It's very worthwhile noting that we do have a very healthy support system of other people that can step forward, even in those emergency situations that happen in Parkside, where you were able to appoint someone on a very short basis. All of that to get to this point, which is I think that we need to be mindful that we don't want to rush this whole process. And with that in mind, we need to better control that way of us managing the timeline and the process, but not feeling a sense of being rushed to have to do this. I'm not a great supporter of the blended concept, and I think you've heard some of those ideas here. I think that it's healthy for faculty, academic staff, and others to really have a very free, open opportunity for discussion and to be able to analyze and look at candidates from their perspective. And I'm concerned that if we step in, we bring another element that at that crucial time may not be necessary. I think that we need to look at the candidates from a very different perspective. And so I hope that we don't move towards a blended simply because we want to either shorten the time frame or rush the process. I would hope that we allow faculty, academic staff, others to have an opportunity to really engage in some very thoughtful discussion without either intentionally or unintentionally us influencing that opportunity.
Your remark put me in mind of another practical consideration that I know sometimes has come into play, and that is our Regent meeting dates and how they line up vis-a-vis finally securing the assent from a candidate you want. And one of the things we often find ourselves saying internally is, boy, we'd really like to get this done so we could bring the recommendation to the November board meeting, and that's a week away. If we miss that date, it's another month or maybe 2 months before the Regents would meet again, and then you've got a candidate who is sort of officially there but really hasn't been appointed by the full board yet, and it's a squirrely time for the candidate. Now, again, there are ways to address that. We could have a special meeting of the board. We could have the executive committee act on it. All of the, I think, considerations have ways that we can get at those considerations if we want to make some of these changes. Regent Falbo.
I do think it's important for every group involved in this process to have better knowledge of what their responsibilities are. A search and screen committee, they don't do this all the time. They may do it once in their career, twice in their career, and it's a lot to ask of them just with the charging meeting to go forward and be infallible. Probably the same with the Regents committee, that maybe we need to better define what our role is. And if we're not going to have a blended committee, and I understand the points that you're making not to, maybe we need to define the responsibilities of a Regents committee, that it is your responsibility to attend some of the campus interviews so that when you come to that final meeting to make a final decision, it's your responsibility to be informed, not to inform us in the course of 2 hours and make a decision. So I think there's things we can do there. I think further discussion could be had about some type of professional, either internally or on call, because I think that's pretty important. Campus visits, I understand the sensitivity. There's a community there, though, and Kevin, in the process of the searches, you always knew somebody or knew somebody who knew somebody, and so that maybe we can do those things on a less formal basis, but get the input we need. I think this will be good even if we don't. But I think having some professional input, just representing us, not a search firm representing themselves. However we can do this is not a cost. In the long run, it's a savings. I'd hate to even ask you how much this has cost us. So I don't look at it on an ongoing basis as a cost. I look at it as an efficiency and potentially a big savings. So I think there's a lot for us to do here to be better prepared in every search coming up. And I also, well, I don't even want to say, I'd like a whole different system, but it's not going to happen. I mean, I'd like to be hiring people that are our future, in the provost positions and in other positions that are our future chancellors. But obviously we have a process, and that process won't allow for that to happen in and of itself. And we have so much talent that, I don't mean to go on about that. It's probably, but I like the talent we have. I'd like to be able to move it around as the appropriate times came up. But our hands are tied a bit on that. But I think this is going to be good, no matter what we incorporate or don't. I think we all know we have to do a better job of it. I think we all know that we're not prepared when we're called on to do that job enough. and that we have to get better prepared in every decision we're going to make in the future.
I think that's right. I think everything you said is correct, and I think we can certainly use the search firms in ways we haven't in the past to do some more formal sort of orientation and training. Again, I have seen that happen in some instances, but it has not happened in every instance. And formalizing some of this in the way we deal with those firms and what we ask them to do jointly with the chair of the local campus committee, I think that bears a lot of attention, and we can do that. Regent Vasquez and Regent Smith.
I think if we don't move into the blended concept, then I would like to recommend, whether it has to be via motion because it may change the policy or just through some informal consensus, that Regent Kiesler's suggestion that search special Regent committee, that one of the requirements is that you do have to attend the presentation. I think that's an excellent time to have the regents step in. They get to see the candidates. They get an opportunity to talk to the other the faculty and academic staff search and screen committee members. So there's an opportunity there to get additional insights beyond just the formal last meeting between the committee and the special regent group. So I would like to encourage that we seriously looked at as one of the requirements of that special committee. It means a little extra work, but I think it's worth it in the end. On the final thing I just want to comment on the employer's rep, so to speak, I think we also may want to look at, I don't know if it's necessary that we have to look at someone that's going to be present throughout every single day and meeting and everything as the primary consultant, but we may want to look at more of an audit, kind of a periodic audit during the course of the process that would allow us to just kind of spot check, are you doing things, are they going well? And that may be about all we need, as opposed to hiring someone that's going to shadow both the committee and the consultant almost on a day-by-day basis.
Thank you. Regent Smith.
I don't think I've done quite as many searches as Eileen has, but I've done a number, and I'd like to go back to what she said. I think basically the system we have works, and the proof, of course, is in the people who are sitting on this other side of the room. So while I think, excuse me, some of the fine-tuning that you've suggested, Kevin, is good, I don't think we should lose sight here that I think what we have is a good process in tow. I think the information that we come to at that final meeting, the special Regent committee meeting, the interview is quite frankly a small part of the information that at least I make my decision on. We have kept in touch and I think use a lot what the campus committee has done, and not only through their own interviews but through the interviews on campus. I know at using La Crosse as the last example, and I think if Carmen is in the audience here, Carmen Wilson, we had several conversations who was ahead of to get impressions. There was some surveys taken of the people who had seen the candidates, and that, as I said at the time, had a great deal to do with the selection of Chancellor Gao. You had done, I know, some checks, Kevin, and so we do the Google, we do the internet kind of searches. So I think we come to that last meeting with a good deal of information, only part of which is through the interview process. Not that we can't have some fine-tuning, which I think we have, but I think we have a pretty good system in place from my perspective.
Others, yes, Regent Crane.
I like the idea of the Regent Committee having some responsibilities for those campus sessions with candidates. I do think it's important, though, that we not make it a requirement that every member of the Regent Committee attend all of those sessions, because that's impossible to do that, especially since we don't want a Regent Committee that's made up only of regents who happen to live in close proximity. But it certainly seems to me we could have some representation at those. The second thing I'd like to say about that, though, is and I am highly in favor of that and plan to do that in Green Bay. But I think it's important that we not appear to be weighing in at that point. We're there to collect information. And finally, we do have 2 searches going on right now, and they're well along, and we're going to have some work to do fairly shortly. And so anything that we need to know in the Green Bay and River Falls situations, we need to know now.
And on that point, we are in the process of arranging a call or calls among the chairs of those 2 search committees and the region chairs, Judy and Brent, next week probably to go over what's in this report and to give them the feeling that comes out of this discussion today. So you're right, Judy, we need, I think, to make sure the benefit of your wisdom filters into those searches now. Regent Spector.
My comment is just a brief one based on a lot of experience in hiring higher level people of the quality of our chancellors, and that is nothing replaces going to where they work if you can. Typically you can't, because they haven't told their employer that they're leaving. But in my experience, you gain information in a face-to-face meeting that just you can't over a telephone call. It isn't the same. If you establish some rapport, if you put people at their ease, they will tell you things that you might never otherwise hear, which may be valuable or may not. I think it depends on the situation, how you feel about if there is uncertainty, if there is. I wouldn't rule it out, though, that's all, in certain cases.
As I said, I think part of what I'd like to propose here, that on some of these suggestions, like the one about the campus visits, as Regent Spector said, we keep it as a possibility, not rule it out, not require it in every instance, but keep it in mind as something we may want to do in certain circumstances. Regent Pruitt.
Kevin, I just wanted to follow up on your opening suggestion. I'd love to hear a couple comments from this distinguished group of people who have been through it on the other side, and also bring sort of other perspectives from other states and other systems. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts or comments, but I think we'd all welcome.
Let me second that, and let me say too, the provost should feel, if they have something to contribute, to speak up as well. But Carlos?
Increasingly, public universities in this country are going to searches that are more private than public. They are not having open campus visits. They are really have a large entrance of search committees, extensive search committees, 30 to 35 people. They get the list down to 5, and then the board takes over. And the board can be with that group of 5 candidates, whittling them down from 5 to 1 over as long as a 6-week period, where first the executive committee of the board meets with the candidates, then the search committee of the board meets, and then the full board. By that time, they've had enough experience in talking with the finalists that they're down to the one person they want. And they go to the campus and they announce it. This is a new trend in public hiring. And they're doing that in part because city presidents and chancellors are not going to apply to a public process while they are in their office. So I'm not saying that this board should do that or that the state should do that, but I'm just telling you that the competition out there is starting to do that, and you should be aware of that.
Chancellor Brunel.
One of Dr. Porch's recommendations was that there be a person in the system office who monitored, managed, stayed close with the search process. I could just share with you that in the Minnesota State University system, the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs was chair of every search committee, and that happened to be one of my responsibilities. I always brought in an outside firm to train the board in what search process, to train those from the campus in terms of what the search process is really all about, how they must behave, confidentiality, and so forth. But for the board, I represented the board in the search, and then once the finalists were named, I was able to sit with each board member and talk with them about the strengths and weaknesses, and then the chancellor and I would meet with the individuals separately, and the chancellor would in fact make a recommendation to the board members. So that's how it goes on in this.
Chancellor Gao.
I thought the process was very conventional and fairly typical and a good one. I think what Susan Vasquez has said is very important. I think allowing the campus community to take the lead in that initial stage is very important, because then later on there's a legitimacy that you have that you might not have if it's perceived. I mean, what Carlos is describing, yes, I see that trend as well. I wonder, though, that people who come through that process, whether they have the legitimacy on the campus, because it's so heavily driven at a higher level. Having said that, what Regent Falvell has said is very important. Some of these committees, you have people who have likely have never done this kind of thing before, and so it's very important to have a serious conversation, particularly about the reference stage and being sensitive to maybe subtle cues. The case that brought us to this discussion was extraordinary, and I'm kind of a student of these things, and it's just textbook case. And my read on it, and I've not talked to anybody who was involved with it, just reading the report, was that I think people were not entirely forthcoming in the reference stage, and it was not until the announcement was made that the person had secured another position that sort of the gates opened and everything came out. And some of the more extraordinary things, I don't think anybody knew were going to happen, so there was no way to see that coming. So it really underscores the importance of making sure that people who are leading the initial stages are, you have people expressing concerns. Those are taken very, very seriously, because as we know, most of us try to be polite and, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything. That in itself may be a sign that you got to probe a little deeper. If there are things that are on the record that somebody was, for example, the subject of a no confidence vote, I think that cannot be easily dismissed, and you have to have a conversation with that person. Why did that happen, and what are the dynamics of it? And so I don't know who said it, but I wouldn't let one highly unusual case dramatically change a process that seems to work quite well. It's just what you learn from that case, and take that back to the people who are not full-time search people, and do a little more education.
Chancellor Wells?
I guess in thinking about this, the point that I think is most important, the chancellor and president position is hugely unique, and very, very, very rarely anybody on the committee ever done the job. People have experience being CEOs of companies. That's not the same thing as being chancellor. There's some aspect of that, or they've been mayors of towns. There's some aspect of that. So it's a very special kind of position that is the way I try to describe it to people is, in the process, there's a set of constituents who want to elect the chancellor, and then there's a set of constituents, you all, who want to appoint the chancellor. And that's just the way it is. And we hope to have a situation where whoever ends up got elected and selected. And that doesn't always happen. You win an election and lose the appointment. You win the appointment and lose the election. Of course, you don't have a process in the end where that doesn't happen. So that's a big part of it. So to that end, I think it's hugely important, and I've been pleased and honored to be able to talk to the Green Bay search team twice now. It's been an hour and a half with them. They invited me. And this has happened in some cases in other searches last week, to talk to them about the position, advice, questions, things of that sort. And I think it would be a very good idea to consider the possibility of adding I know my colleagues and I would be more than happy to get passed. The other thing is we have a vested interest in who that next person is, particularly in our regions, because all of us now are integrating and working together in regions, and that's an important piece of it.
Very helpful. And I think you know that in a number of searches, as in the Green Bay search, sitting chancellors have been asked to come and talk to the search committees, but we haven't, again, sort of formalized it or regularized it, and we certainly haven't gone to the step that Rick is suggesting of inviting sitting chancellors to serve on the committees. Interesting idea. I think we ought to think about more. Chancellor Ward.
I guess drawing on my experience when I was at System and participated in something like 24 searches in that period of time, I would agree with Regent Kiesler. By and large, I think the process is a good process. A few of those folks are still here. We have long and successful chancellorships. The one comment I would make is that, having been gone for 8 years now back, these jobs I think are less attractive than they were for a variety of reasons. And now we're getting to the point where it's difficult to get a candidate pool together. You can't rely on the campus folks to do that, so you're relying more and more on your consultants to do it. I would just advise that you look at that and manage your consultant resource. Make sure that your consultant who's within 2 dozen searches, and what you're getting is a recycling of candidates from other failed searches. So somewhere in there you should set a standard for how many searches they're involved in, at least at the critical stages, or you're going to have trouble.
Good points. Yes, Regent Davis.
I'd like to bring back up a point that Regent Falvo made, and for consideration, not as a recommendation, but something that we need to talk about, and that is the talent that is possessed or represented in our provost pool. And I too am concerned about the fact that we don't seem to have any way of encouraging the recognition of that pool. And I don't know what the issues are around this. I'm not in any way saying, and here's the solution. But I think to the point that Chancellor Ward made, and you know, when you're being competitive, you know, competitive ought to also include your own people. So I don't know what that means, but I would love to know that we can look into that in the future, because I just think that we have such a talent pool there, and my sense is that I'm not trying to accuse anything, but it just doesn't seem like we're encouraging them to be candidates for, because I don't see a whole lot of them applying for it. So the result seems to be not, but I don't know why not. And Lane wants to answer.
Yes. Interim Chancellor Ernst.
We've lost some good provosts recently who got very good jobs outside of the state. People recognize the talent. The problem in this system is with the first level, the campus level, which tends to have a bias against other campuses. That somehow those campuses are unique and people can't understand them. That they'll bring the Green Bay philosophy or an Eau Claire philosophy that won't be understood on our campus. And I think that's really unfair to the provosts who do understand the system very well and are being eliminated at very early stages of competition by campus personnel who don't quite understand how much the provosts know about the system.
This is helpful, and I think we have made attempts recently to encourage our provosts to apply. We have looked for opportunities, as with Lane, for them to step up if they're interested into an interim chancellor position. But maybe, Rebecca, you and your provost colleagues ought to have a little more formal discussion about this at one of the provost gatherings coming up and come forward with some suggestions. Part of it can be picking up on Lane's point, our charging the search and screen committees in a somewhat different way to not have that kind of a prejudice, because I agree. I mean, I think one of the virtues of this system is that as a provost, having been one myself, you really do get to understand and appreciate things about the other institutions in the system that no outsider coming in will know. And that should be an advantage, not a disadvantage for sitting provosts applying to be chancellors, I think. Chancellor Wilson.
Since I've been a part of our system, I've been struck by the number of campus deans and CEOs over the years who have gone on to other institutions in other states and have made a remarkable mark at those institutions. And at the same time, I've been struck by the paucity of those campus deans and CEOs who have appeared in searches of our own. And so I'm wondering aloud if we might not be overlooking, if you will, a talent pool that is in our backyard. And we typically attracted to those positions are individuals who are perhaps 5 to 6 years in their higher education career in terms of administrative experience. They are coming to us with an intent perhaps to stay 5 to 7 years. They have executive level responsibility on the campuses. They are responsible for connecting those campuses with communities. Indeed, the kind of complexity of the chancellor position that Chancellor Wells spoke of is the kinds of issues that these campus deans and CEOs in particular are dealing with every day. And so I just don't want us to overlook any of the talent that we have around the system and preclude one of the campus deans and CEOs who may be heading, quote unquote, a 2-year campus from being a very serious candidate for moving up into some of these senior positions. And I think that also could lead to longer tenures among chancellors, if you will, because those individuals who have been in our state for a period of time that have come to understand and appreciate the state, and perhaps we could look at a longer tenure. So I just had to put that out there because I didn't want us perhaps to begin to think about these positions in those positions.
Good point. Chancellor Vasquez and then, or Regent Vasquez and then Regent Pruitt.
Not by any means. I'd like to thank Regent Davis for bringing this topic up. I think it's a very, very important one. And as I'm hearing the discussion, it really underscores a couple of things in my mind. One of them is the role of the, again, the Regent Special Committee sending a clear message, not stating that that's the only type of, that's the only ultimate candidate that we want, but I think that sends a clear message of saying, you know, we highly encourage upwards within the system. We think that's an important consideration there. The second thing that I also, as I was listening to the discussion, it also reaffirms Chancellor Wells' point of the role of sitting chancellors also participating, because I think that they will help give those committees, and I would agree with you, I think there is a certain bias, give those committees an additional insight that says that you can speak from your first-hand experience that when you came to this campus, whether it be Oshkosh or Green Bay or Stout, that you didn't come here to replicate your previous institution, that you came here to manage and take this institution where it is and take it further, as opposed to I'm here to bring my former institution and trying to transplant it here. And so I think it just, in my mind, it reinforced the importance of that, as well as also the role of the Regent Committee to also send a clear message.
Good, thank you. Regent Pruitt.
Just a brief comment on expanding talent pools, and I could not agree more with Chancellor Wilson, with Regent Davis and with others as we talk about encouraging our sort of internal candidates. I think that is, and anything I think we can do as a board to send that message, I think is very important. I also think, to the degree we can, send a message about non-traditional candidates for chancellor positions is equally important. And whatever we do in the charging process, and I know there are challenges on the search and screen committee process related to non-traditional candidates that are some of the same but different challenges that exist for internal candidates and for internal system candidates. But I think this issue, as Chancellor Ward is suggesting, that this job has gotten potentially more difficult to attract, just increases the urgency of us sending messages across the board to sort of expand the talent pool as much as we can, and I think that should include non-traditional candidates as well.
Thanks. Regent Walsh.
Thank you. Yeah. I've worked with you. We've done well. We're really talking about this because of an aberration. But my perspective in being involved in the Madison and the president's search is that the pool issue is a serious problem, and our discussion about internal candidates is excellent, and I think that's great. But we still have the problem that David Ward talked about and Chancellor Ward talked about, and that is that it's being more difficult to improve that pool. And it's a twofold problem. One is the public transparency nature of it, that it chills other people from taking a hard look at it. The other thing, and the result of that is that we rely more and more on consultants. And I have a lot of opinions on consultants, and if anything comes out of this, I would hope that Al Christ would understand he's got a bigger job than he used to have, and that is we need to start vetting those consultants. And we need to start, and by vetting them, I mean we need to start calling the schools that they have worked at and getting some feedback from them. We have to make sure that it's not a revolving door at the consultants, because if you look, they're going from one company to the other. And finally, we ought to check their Rolodexes, because it's always the same people. And so that's one thing we've got to be careful about going down the road. The other thing is timing. And Kevin, you said that, well, we'd like to fit into the Regent meeting. I would say just the opposite. The Regents can meet whenever we damn well want them to meet. And I wouldn't do it around our meeting schedule. The second thing about the timing is what Mike Spector said. You know, it really, nothing substitutes for better due diligence than we do. And face-to-face is really, really important. Now, we're not going to always get the face-to-face, but we have that small window between the time they go public under our statutes and we make the decision. I think that window can be expanded. Once they're public, they're public. And we need to spend more time doing our own due diligence because we're not getting it from the consultants. And if we can, we ought to be looking face-to-face at people. This problem came about because we didn't do that. And more problems will come about because we didn't do it. So I have two suggestions. One, we've got to improve the pool, and the way to do that is to expand it, and we've heard some suggestions, and I would expect more from the consultants. And the second, at the end, when it's our responsibility, we've got to take more time doing it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes.
I would just like to, very briefly, Parkside. I just want to pick up on what Lane said in some of these other conversations, which is this, that education is something we do very well. I think we do it very well. And to me, that's the nub of what we're hearing. The first is the education of the search committee, because they don't really know what chancellors do. And in essence, then, they don't know how to vet them appropriately because they're asking, in many cases, the wrong questions. Second, what Lane pointed out, that disqualifying a candidate because they come from a more selective UW comprehensive course and say, well, that person wouldn't understand our students. When, if you've been here for a while, if you've been here for a while, you've heard all these presentations on all sorts of campuses, and so you really do have acquaintance that way, and you talk to one another, and so you have acquaintance that way as well. So there are misperceptions on the part of faculty members on search committees on campuses because they tend to be more insular than not. There are not that many opportunities to be
where they are engaged in conversations with other campuses, though of course there's some with what the system organizes. And the aspect of internal versus external, I've chaired some searches, and candidates have asked me, is there an internal candidate? And if you say yes, they are predisposed not to apply, because the common wisdom is internal is going to get it. And I've had the opposite saying, well, no, there isn't. Okay, then I will apply. And I think that's, again, educational, to just have the sense, whether it's the committee, the consultants, et cetera. And I want to really emphasize the point of the consultants, because it's also the nature of the stable that they have. And so when you look at the consulting firm and you see the majority of the searches in which they're involved are searches for deans, you might not see that as an appropriate search committee to help you, because their point is to help you. And in essence, they have this other agenda, which is to get their people employed. And so as long as we maximize our sense of investment in the process, a process which I agree has worked very well, and this was an odd and unusual case, but looking at it and then thinking about the future, where everybody knows that this is something that's changing, it's not going to stay the same, it does, I think, it's very encouraging for me to hear that we'll reconsider some of our processes and fine-tuning some of those processes, but especially the education of the people involved, which leads to the last quick thing which Regent Falbo mentioned. And I think that idea of what is my job on the Regents' final committee? Do I have the right, or do I have the obligation, if the campus has overwhelmingly said this is the one, and I think maybe they're not, is it my responsibility, obligation, in my purview to bring that up and say no? And I think that's an awfully difficult thing to do, unless going into this you understood that's your role. So coming back to the end, we all can use more education on how the process works, everyone who's involved in it, and I think we can improve it without dramatic changes of any sort. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry, for those good points, and two comments on them. One, it's about choosing the right search firm, but then it's about choosing the right consultant in that firm, because they don't all have the same stable, and that's that's part of what I think we need to pay more attention to as well. And then a comment on having inside candidates and their effect on outside candidates. It's very rare when I will call somebody trying to get them into a chancellor pool, that somebody from outside the system, that they will not ask me. It's rare that they will not ask me, is there an inside candidate? They know we have a big system. They know we operate as a system. And very often they don't just mean, is there an inside candidate on that campus? They mean, is there an inside candidate in the system that you, Mr. President, and the Regents like? And and again, all of these things have upsides and downsides. In a sense, you could argue that's the downside of encouraging a lot of inside candidates, because you will drive some good candidates from outside away. They will not apply if they get the sense that there's an inside candidate who somehow has an inside track. It's not true of everybody, but it certainly has happened not infrequently in my experience. Not a reason not, on the other hand, in my opinion, it's not a reason not to encourage our internal talent to apply, but it's a reality of the process. All right, anybody else? Seeing no hands up, hearing nobody else. Here's what I'd suggest. A couple things. Number one, we will go ahead, unless I hear from any of you shortly, making those changes in our internal guidelines. We will have that conference call with the River Falls and the Green Bay chairs of both the Regent and the campus search committees. We will be starting the Parkside search again soon now, with the benefit of some of these changes. So we'll have three underway, I think, pretty soon again. And then I think on some of the bigger items we've talked about, like the blended committee, like visiting the campus, I think what I'm hearing is let's keep them on the table as options. Let's see when and where we might want to go to them. Let's think about them a little more. I guess I'd like a little time to think, and then what I'd like to do is to consult with the region president, region vice president, and then get something out to the full board saying, well, here's what I think we need to do based on the conversation we just had. And again, in the next week or so, if anybody in the room has other ideas, other thoughts occur, please give me a call, and we'll get those into the mix as well. Does that seem appropriate?
I think there's one other little thing.
Yes,
and
Regent
you
Davis.
said that the senior vice president should also get together with the provost to
Yes.
have a little conversation on that issue as
Yes,
well.
and I know she will do that. She was shaking her head when you said that. Yeah, with glee, right. All right, well, thank you. This was a very good discussion. I want to thank all the regents, chancellors, provosts for helping out with this. And one of the overall suggestions in Dr. Porch's report was that we use our chancellors in a variety of ways more actively. And I think that's, I'm hearing very good and strong advice that we do that, and we'll make some changes so that happens with their permission. Since Chancellor Wells has volunteered all their time, we know that they'll all be willing to do it. So, all right, thank you. I'm going to move along with the rest of my report, Mr. President, so with some good news items from the campus. UW Eau Claire's Blue Gold Marching Band is no stranger to warming up a crowd, but they took that to a new level recently when the band, 230 members strong, was invited to perform in front of 71,000 fans at Lambeau Field for the Green Bay Packers season opener against the Minnesota Vikings. This was the second time the band has had that honor. The last time they performed there was in 2004. The Blue Gold Marching Band is the largest marching band of any NCAA Division III college or university, according to the director, Randall Dickerson, who adds, the energy level is at an all-time high, and this just added fuel to the fire. Malcolm Brett, the Director of Broadcasting and Media Innovations at UW Extension, and a number of you know Malcolm, has been elected to the Public Broadcasting Service PBS Board of Directors, the National Board of Directors. Malcolm is a 25-year veteran of Wisconsin public broadcasting. In fact, he's been around so long that he actually saw Charlie Connerly play quarterback for the New York Giants. So Charlie Connerly, for you youngsters, led the Giants to a victory in the first NFL championship game, played at Yankee Stadium when they trounced the Bears 47-7 back in the 1950s. And Malcolm is from New York, and he's a New York Giant fan. He'll begin his 3-year term on the PBS board next month. And he said, as a member of the board, I'll be able to draw on WPT's rich legacy and innovative work as we look to shape new opportunities for public broadcasting nationally. And having served as Chancellor of Extension and worked with Malcolm and worked with the National Public Broadcasting System, I know that the work both public television and public radio do in Wisconsin is very highly respected at the national level, and this is a great opportunity, I think, for folks at the national level to learn even more about the good work that we're doing, and for us to learn from them as well. So congratulations to our colleague Malcolm. Like many other campuses, UW Parkside is gung-ho to get students involved in this fall's election. Parkside Student Government recently launched its VIP project, that is, the Voter Initiative Parkside Project. Working with officials in Kenosha and Racine, the group is using everything from speeches by local leaders to busing voters to the clerk's office to cast their ballots to encourage UW Parkside students, faculty, and staff not only to get out the vote, but also to get involved in their communities. Student Government President Ted Ruffalo, who previously served in Iraq with the Marine Corps, said he saw there firsthand the power of the democratic process, and he hopes the same passion for electoral participation can be energized here. One of the objectives under our growth agenda is to increase access and encourage a broader diversity in our student populations. Moving in that direction, several of our campuses this fall have reported increases in the numbers of international students. UW-Whitewater, for instance, is welcoming its largest international population ever, with more than 150 international students coming this fall from places as far-flung as Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and the Philippines and the United Kingdom. Last month, UW-Oshkosh became the first university in the United States to be designated a fair trade university by making a commitment to do its part in ending trade injustices that contribute to millions of people living in poverty. As you may know, the idea behind the fair trade movement is to support production that offers farmers and artisans a living wage and humane working conditions, while also protecting the environment. About 70 universities in Europe have fair trade university status, including, for instance, the University of Birmingham, the University of Edinburgh, but UW-Oshkosh is the first American university to join those ranks. To become a fair trade university, UWO's 4 governing bodies endorsed a resolution that calls for, among other things, selling fair trade certified coffee, tea, and chocolate in university dining establishments whenever feasible, and offering fair trade certified food products and handicrafts at university stores, and generally encouraging students, faculty, and staff to support these items. The fair trade program will be overseen by the newly formed Campus Sustainability Council. As Chancellor Rick Wells puts it, sustainability goes well beyond being green. It includes social justice as well. So congratulations to Chancellor Wells and his colleagues at Oshkosh on that. Also committed to building a better future, literally, UW-Richland has announced a new educational alliance with the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture in Spring Green. Frank Lloyd Wright is, of course, the world-renowned architect who was born in Richland Center and had his summer home, Taliesin, in Spring Green. Under the new agreement, students who spend their freshman and sophomore years at UW-Richland and earn their Associate of Arts and Science degree can then apply to the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture as juniors. There they can earn their Bachelor of Architectural Studies degree. Our communities share a great deal in terms of Wright's history, said Dr. Lynn Broderson, the Dean of UW-Richland. We're pleased with this new opportunity for our students that builds on these connections. I also wanted to call your attention to a new study that UW is participating in. It's the Wisconsin Transfer Equity and Accountability Study. This is a study that looks at how to increase the number of minority students who transfer into baccalaureate degree programs, and an objective, again, clearly in line with the growth agenda. It's a collaborative effort between the UW, the Tech College system, and the University of Southern California's Center for Urban Education, which also is the unit we're working with on the Equity Scorecard, as many of you know. The new project is being funded by the Ford Foundation in the amount of $535,000. Goals include making increased access for racial and ethnic minorities to the UW colleges, our two-year institutions, more visible and a strategic priority of the system, and also making then the transfer of these students from the UW colleges and from our WTCS campuses more visible and strategic priority in the UW system. Teams of faculty members and staff and administrators will be inquiring into transfer practices and policies with a special focus on equity. That is, how do we achieve parity in successful transfer outcomes across racial and ethnic groups? Finally, it seems highly likely that a little piece of UW innovation may soon find its way into every home in America. It was announced late last month that UW-Oshkosh art professor Richard Masters' design featuring Abraham Lincoln's log cabin has been selected as one of 4 designs for the new U.S. penny. The 4 designs, each representing a different era of Lincoln's life, will be on the tails of the new coin. Professor Masters' design features a log cabin representing Lincoln's humble beginnings in Kentucky, and also will bear the familiar inscriptions E Pluribus Unum, United States of America, and 1 cent. The coins will be released into circulation on Lincoln's 200th birthday, which is this coming February 12th. So congratulations to Professor Masters, and now we know, now that we know about his work, we're penny wise and not pound foolish. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Well, thank you, President Riley. And I also want to thank the chancellors and the provosts and staff who helped enrich our discussion on the selection process. Every regent, when you become a regent, you're told, and then I think you end up repeating this to new regents, and that is the most important work that we do is selecting the chancellors for the system. So that was very helpful. And Kevin, I would also ask if you would please thank Steve Porch on behalf of the board. He's a friend of the UW system, and he accepted the invitation by Kevin to do this important study, and we I want to thank him for his willingness, but also the fine job that he did.
I will do that.
Go ahead. Regent Spector.
Former regent and as a chancellor of a major.
Well, a couple things.
And a major
Company.
corporation.
He is a fairly active member of the National Association of System Heads, and I now sit on the executive committee of that group, so that's most often where I see him. But there is also a series of diversity awards that he endowed, named after him, that we are now awarding on a yearly basis. And I have invited him each year to come back for that event that the Regents are involved in. He hasn't been able to, just given schedules, but we will invite him again, and maybe that would be a time, if we can get him to come, when he might talk with us at a board meeting. All right. Good. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, and now the moment we've all been waiting for, and that is the report of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. I call upon Regent Smith.
Certainly. I know it's the report you've been waiting for. We first heard yesterday afternoon from UW-Stevens Point on their efforts to create a safe campus community and the actions that were being taken in that regard. We first heard about hiring of additional police officers and counselors, arming of police officers, communication system upgrades, and the educational system sessions for faculty. We also heard UW-Stevens Point has plans to coordinate emergency notification with surrounding neighborhoods. Overall, I think our committee was pleased with the progress that UW-Stevens Point had made with regard to the recommendation by the President's Security Commission, but we also wanted to get an update at some point in the not too distant future on what other campuses are doing in this regard, to see where we all are as far as the compliance with some of the recommendations you had in your report, Kevin. So we look forward to that at some future meeting. A number of presentations regarding trust funds that I think were in your materials. First heard about the UW System Trust Fund's participation in issues involving discrimination in the environment and social injury through proxy voting. And again, those I think were listed in the materials. And the best report, of course, in accordance with our Regent resolution, the committee accepted, not surprisingly, 8 bequests with a total value of $2.8 million, which we'll have a vote on later. Again, some committee business. We approved specified goals and targets for the 2009-11 biennial budget performance measures. These measures included targeted enrollment growth of over 4,000 FTE over fall 2007 enrollments, a retention rate of 82%, an overall UW system graduation rate of 65%, and continuing to increase the contribution made to the Wisconsin economy each year. These measures have been presented to the Board of Regents in the past as part of our biennial budget proposals. This is actually the first time the measures have been set out in a separate approval by the Board, and that again will be part of a resolution. We had an extended discussion about the primary responsibilities typically assumed by business, finance, and audit committees in higher education. These responsibilities include establishing financial controls and managing risk, managing an open budget process, developing tuition policies and rates, connecting capital budget, project planning, and debt financing decisions, and ensuring that an active and transparent audit process is in place. I think some of you saw the memo outline that Tom had put forth on those 5 responsibilities of that committee. We came out of it saying we wanted to think about some further reporting option and our need for financial information to ensure that different campuses are meeting their goals. Finally, we heard from Vice President Durkin that total gift, grant, and contract awards for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2008 were $1.2 billion, a decrease of $83.2 million from the prior year. The federal awards decreased $47.5 million, while non-federal awards decreased $35.7 million. The decreases in federal research awards were predominantly due to some timing issues. Gift funding for the microbiology building at UW-Madison accounted for the decline in the non-federal awards. Two resolutions that we approved, and I move on behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. One is Resolution 12B3, UW System Trust Funds Acceptance of Bequests, and Resolution 12C2, UW System 2009-11 Biennial Budget Performance Measures, and I'd move approval of those resolutions.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay, is there a request to remove either item from the consent agenda? If not, any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Regent Smith. And now, would Regent Bartel present the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee met yesterday. We started a little late because Regent Walsh was looking for a room with no windows in it and couldn't find us. But we did get started, and we unanimously approved the following resolutions, which are now presented as consent agenda items. Resolution 13D requests authority to adjust the project budget of UW-Stevens Point Waste Management Center project to $4.4 million. This project will construct the first waste management facility of its kind built at a technical college or university in Wisconsin, and will feature a pilot wastewater treatment plant, a composting lab, a microbiology lab, and an adjoining recycling center offering co-training opportunities in materials recycling, a very interesting project. This project was previously enumerated in the 2005-2007 capital budget with a price tag of $2.5 million, but that estimate was made very early in the design process, and because of the project's uniqueness and the lack of any recently constructed similar facilities, when the design was far enough along in the planning process, it became clear that some of the original design features were just impractical and wouldn't work. The increase in the project budget, therefore, results from a choice of new construction materials as well as a change in the reprogramming of the lab space to research space and some inflation. So that's that project. Second resolution we took up was 1.3.E, which seeks authority to increase the project budget and construct the Hovland Hall renovation and addition project at UW-Stout. This project will renovate space in Hovland Hall on the North Campus, which was constructed originally in 1960. To provide modern double occupancy residency rooms, expanded restrooms, modern kitchen, lounge areas, and food service facilities. The need for the budget increase here is due to construction inflation and an increase in the scope of the project to include larger food service component. This is a $12.4 million project previously enumerated in 2003-2005 capital budget at $8.5 million. And let me stop for a moment, sidebar comment on these two projects. You hear from our committee regularly on the with reports to increase the amount of the enumerated budget. This happens regularly. It happens because of what we discussed at our last meeting, which is a capital planning process, which was called last time somewhat dysfunctional, and I think that's an accurate description. It is partly and I'll have more to say to this at the end of this report, but it is partly the timing of the capital requests and partly the process through which the proposal has to go in order to get to completion. This will continue to happen until we reform the capital planning process in our in the state of Wisconsin. Let me continue. The resolution 1.3.F requests approval to construct 7 minor projects under the All-Agency Maintenance Fund program. The most notable of these is the UW-Madison Walnut Street Heating Plant Chiller Replacements Project, which will install 2 new electric chillers and substantially increase the chilled water capacity at that plant. The debt service on this project will be paid from annual energy cost savings from the fuel and utilities appropriation. And the simple payback on this project is less than 7 years. After that, basically we're making money. Finally, Resolution 1.3.G, brought by UW-Whitewater, asks for authority to construct the softball bleachers portion of the multisport Phase 3 project. This campus is requesting construction of a portion of the larger project, so the bleachers for the softball complex will be in place by spring of 2009. This is funded by program revenue supported borrowing and gift funds for a total of approximately $3.5 million. And these 4 resolutions were passed unanimously by our committee, and I now move adoption of resolutions 1.3.D, E, F, and G.
Second? Moved and seconded. Any request to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, then any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The committee continued, and Associate Vice President David Miller presented to us the UW System 2009-2015 Physical Development Plan. This plan represents capital budget priorities for the 15 UW System institutions for the next 3 biennia. Developing a system-wide long-range plan allows the UW institutions, the Board of Regents, the Department of Administration, and the legislature, and other policymakers who are reviewing these matters to better understand and better manage the facilities needs that we have in the UW system. This plan is a point-in-time reference and will remain flexible to allow for uncertain circumstances that may arise, such as increasing and decreasing funding levels and program changes. Now, believe it or not, this is really the first comprehensive planning document of this type that we've had in the system for, I think it's almost 2 decades. It is a document that was prepared by capital planning budget staff. It includes information about each of the campuses, what their long-range plans are. It critiques the projects, it describes them, it identifies them by physical location and cost, and it allows people who are responsible for making these decisions a rational basis for making those decisions. I'm hoping that we will be able to get this document in some form to all of the regents, David, because I think it's a terrific document, and I want to compliment David and his staff for putting this together. This is part of the rationalization process that we wanted to bring to the capital planning process in this last year, and this is a very good start. We had a presentation by Chancellor David Wilson and Vice Chancellor Steve Wildick regarding the major support that the colleges and extension receive from the counties and municipalities in which they reside. As many of you know, funding of facilities for the colleges falls on the county or city where the college is located. Construction and renovation is the responsibility of the counties. Staffing and program costs are picked up in our budget, and repair and maintenance of those facilities is shared. The insured value of the UW College's facilities is approximately $320 million, with 77 buildings on 13 campuses. And only 2 of those, by the way, are residential halls. I think that's Richland and Marathon. Clearly, the relationship between the UW colleges, UW Extension, and the counties and municipalities where they reside is a very important partnership, and we should be regularly conscious of the contributions that those municipalities and counties make to our system. Finally, Vice President Miller reported to us on efforts that are ongoing to improve the capital planning process. You may be aware that there is a working group in progress trying to identify areas in which we can strengthen that planning process. Two of the most important issues that are being addressed these days are the construction project delivery method decision. By that, I mean, and these are fairly arcane subjects, and we need to learn more about these. But I'm starting to understand. The delivery method has to do with how the state, who the state employs, and under what circumstances to put a project, bring a project to completion. Whether it's a single prime contractor, whether it's multi-prime, whether it's construction manager at risk. There are various ways. There are probably a dozen ways that this can be done. One of the things that we have learned is that most other states, the federal government, most counties, most other governmental units use a single prime approach. We do not. It is not required in our projects. The multi-prime approach, as far as I can see in the information that we've been given, is that it is not the most efficient way to do it, and it is also not the most cost-efficient way to do it. So we're making some progress in that regard. It's a very complicated issue, and Vice President Miller is working with a group on that, and we hope to have a report on that later. The other significant issue in the capital planning process has to do with the scope and budget uncertainty that derives from the fact that we have a process that in most cases, from conception to completion of a capital project, takes a good 8 or 10 years in many cases. Many cases. A campus will come up with an idea, that things that they want to do, present it, goes through system analysis, it goes through into this book as a long-range plan, and it goes through enumeration at least once, possibly twice or more times, and by the time it comes to bidding the process, everything has changed. So we have to go back again. It is terribly dysfunctional. And again, this is a very complicated thing because there are lots of steps along the way. There are lots of people involved. Whether all those people have to be involved in the process, whether we get value out of their involvement, is something that we need to look at. And we are looking at that, and hopefully sometime in the near future we'll be able to come back with some recommendations, some suggestions, and maybe make some improvements in this process. I think, Mr. President, that concludes the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Regent Bartel? Regent Spector. Let me ask Vice President Miller to comment on that.
By statute and administrative rule, there's a committee of 7, 5 Division of State Facility employees and 2 university employees that select architects for every university project. For other agencies, the agency has theirs to vote. So it is an interview process of the top 4 firms after a paper review for projects over $5 million, and for projects under $5 million, it's what we call monthly selection. That is a paper selection from submission. So they are selected by criteria-based, but somewhat subjective parameters. Yeah. Outside technicians. Yes. And both in contracting and with AEs, Wisconsin has a Wisconsin preference, so you really have to be a Wisconsin
Yes. Regent Connolly-Keiser?
We're talking about physical planning. I'm going to put my pitch in one more time that somehow we create endowments for these new buildings so that they're maintained after we build them. I think the university is going to run into a huge problem in 20 years from donors if donors are seeing these buildings that they have now put their names on falling apart. And the state is not keeping up the buildings, and it's $700 million of deferred maintenance that we're dealing with. And we just seem to not want to have that discussion for a variety of reasons. And I think that you're going to hurt yourselves in the long run with donors if we don't start figuring out a way to maintain these buildings after they're up. So I don't know when and if you want to have that discussion, but.
Thank you. By my historical record, that's the 4th time you've told us about that.
I understand there was a regent who brought that up every single meeting years ago. And I said, what? And I go, I'm going to be that person again. And I'm going to keep bringing it up.
You want to talk about underwater things? Good. Well, thank you, Eileen. I mean,
David, do you want to comment on the maintenance issue?
The operational maintenance is done well by the campuses, the day-in maintenance. The issue is they're having to reallocate base resources to do that when they have new space, and that's the #1 crunch. But under the Chancellor's direction and the fiscal plan director, they do a really good job. It's just they are cutting elsewhere to be able to keep that up. And then, of course, the deferred maintenance is in the older facilities that, yes, new facilities will eventually get there. On the issue that Regent Spector raised, with entirely funded buildings, we do have a lot of flexibility in architect selection and building method and so forth. Regent might recall just a couple of months ago we approved construction of the faculty office building of the medical school at UW-Madison, an entirely funded project. So we were basically able to take that offline and out of the state process, do it very quickly through an RFP of a builder and AE all together, and it's working very well.
Regent Vasquez.
On Regent Kiesler's idea, it's a very intriguing and a very worthwhile discussion that maybe happened.
Thank you.
But you may not like you may not like what I'm going to say, though. Being in the nonprofit sector and having to do this, one thing, my experience, and I think I speak at least for the human service, the social service, and most definitely not the university caliber of fundraising, what typically I find is donors are very, very willing to give you the money for the brick and mortar to get the building up. Very, very generous in giving you the money for the operating of programs, but not very interested in giving you the money for the ongoing maintenance of the building. And at least that's my experience at the human service, social service side. if the university can find a very creative way of getting donors to give you that, I think we should pursue it. It's just, at least I want to share with you a perspective, which has been that we struggle in the nonprofit side to get donors to give us the money for the boilers and the air conditioners and the plumbing repairs. Very seldom are they interested in that, but maybe at the university level, those things are attractive to donors.
Can I have a rebuttal on that?
Yes.
Having been fundraising for 25 years in the nonprofit sector, I think you have to make that endowment part of the campaign. I think you're absolutely right that when you go back after the fact and you say the boiler is down, that's not sexy in any way for donors to give to. But when you create that endowment as part of the campaign and you tuck away that $1 million or $2 million right up front, donors actually love that when you tell them you're putting a maintenance endowment in place, because they understand you're thinking about the future, and it's not build it for today and let's just see what happens in 15 years. So that's my experience in fundraising. That's what I want the discussion on, the fact that that endowment should be tacked on right away in the campaign, and the university should hold it, not the state of Wisconsin.
Yes, Chancellor Wells.
La Crosse, as a couple examples, Superior, Parkside, it's very hard just to get them to contribute, period. And what they're interested in is more the kind of programs that are in there, enhancing the quality and adding to the distinctiveness of the building and things of that sort, which gets me to the point about architect selection. I don't remember how many votes there are exactly in the selecting of the architect, but the system and the campus get the minority of those votes. And there are 7 votes totally, and we get 2. All right? That's frustrating because you have people who are wonderful people who get to vote on those things, who are working for us, but they don't report to us. And when you're there trying to keep the pressure on to have the building designed in a functional and aesthetically pleasing way, you're constantly struggling to get that done, particularly on a campus. They're too concerned with, does it fit into the existing architecture? And I'm not saying that's not important, but most of our architecture on the comprehensive campuses is 60s architecture, rectangles, and not very interesting aesthetically. And that's the kinds of things that donors are interested in.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor Wells. Okay, anything else for Regent Bartel? That's where we are on our agenda. Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll turn to the report of the Education Committee from Chair Regent Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I commend you for saving the best for last. Okay, so.
You're welcome.
Okay, our first item was UW-Stevens Point's presentation of its campus academic plan. In addition to the report I gave earlier on Madison, we also heard an impressive presentation of the UW-Stevens Point campus academic plan by Provost Mark Nook. Provost Nook shared with us the 5 academic programming areas on which the campus will focus as it develops its growth agenda and vision for 2015. They include the Wisconsin Institute for Sustainable Technology, Health Sciences, Business and Economics, New Media Development, and International Programs. In the interest of brevity, I want to not go into any great details, but please believe me when I say that we want to thank Provost Nook for a very riveting presentation. We all unanimously felt that he so clearly demonstrated his knowledge and passion in an in-depth way of his campus, and we just thought it was a thrill and a half to just listen to him and engage in dialogue with him, so we want to thank you for that presentation. We then moved on to a report of chapters UWS 17 and 18 Review Committee, Rules, Administrative Rules. The committee, Jane Radu, the Assistant Director of the Office of Operations Review and Audit and Chair of this Review Committee, provided a very clear overview of the report and its key recommended provisions. She described in detail the steps of the administrative rulemaking process, including the following. We're at the beginning, really. The UW system prepares the rules and proposes changes. We then transmit our recommended revisions to the Legislative Council Rules Clearinghouse for their review. In fact, the action of the committee took yesterday, and that I will move for full board action momentarily, is the transmittal of the rules to the Leg Council. Next steps following transmission will be to conduct public hearings, followed by additional revisions by UW system, submission of the draft rules to the legislature for review and hearings as needed. The goal is to have the revised rules promulgated by fall 2009 and hence in effect at all of our institutions. In brief, Chapter 17 revisions seek to clarify, streamline, and improve the efficiency of the rules format, scope, educational sanctions, hearing process, and the emergency suspension process. Chapter 18 revisions seek to improve organization and update, modernize the language, areas of conduct covered, and newer laws now on the books. The committee had a long and at times complex discussion of the rule revisions. We covered a lot of territory and made individual points that were thoroughly raised and examined. Let me provide just a few highlights from that discussion, which did result in the end with an amendment to the resolution we passed. Regent Thomas expressed a number of well-thought-out, as always, concerns that she raised on behalf of students throughout the system with whom she spoke. The review committee members addressed many of those concerns point by point, and while I won't go into them right here, be assured that they are in the minutes and therefore available for your review. Regent Opka North, how did I do that time? Okay.
I've been working on it.
All night long, boy, okay. Joined our meeting and asked that we further amend Chapter 18 to include enabling language for chancellors to enact campus-wide smoking bans and to be able to impose fines for those who disobey the ban. Governance at UW-Platteville has recently passed a non-binding resolution to make the campus non-smoking. And I want to also add to that point that not only did they pass a non-binding resolution, but the student input in its portion of that governance was phenomenal. It was discovered afterwards, however, that state statutes do not allow the resolution to go into effect because of the lack of authority to impose fines beyond as described in statutes and rules. After extensive discussion and guidance from General Counsel Pat Brady and review committee members, we as a committee decided that we would not do this at this time while acknowledging the existing authority of chancellors to establish smoke-free policies, albeit without fines for campus-wide bans beyond those already provided. It also became clear that to add further amendments to the revisions already arrived at for Chapters 17 and 18 would require further vetting, slow down the approval process, and prohibit their promulgation by fall 2009, which we all, I think, agreed that the bulk of what we have before us is an extensive review that has taken quite a bit of time. And so in the interest of getting those changes through, we decided to support the wish of Regent Crane that the board explore the smoking ban issue further. I want to reiterate here the committee's appreciation to Regent Opka North for bringing the topic to our attention and assure him that we will determine the right process for moving forward on the smoking ban issue. Regent Loftus raised a number of interesting questions, as always, and
Say what you want.
And cited one particularly powerful example as the reason for why he would be voting against the resolution, and did, approving the transmission of the revised rules. As Regent Loftus explained, he, I can't read my own writing because I rewrote it. Okay, why he would vote against the resolution, he hearkened back to the civil disobedience marches of the 60s and the Vietnam War as examples of his concern with the idea that certain student behaviors could be disciplined if they impacted substantial, quote, substantial university interests, unquote, a term we discussed at length. The review committee explained that they wanted the term to have flexibility for each campus. Finally, Regent Spector spurred us on in examining more closely the revisions to the rules for Regent involvement in student suspensions from academic programs or majors. He convinced the committee that Regent involvement at the program level was inappropriate. To that end, he proposed an amendment which the committee unanimously approved to delete Section H from Chapter 1710, which removes appeals of student suspensions from programs or majors from the discretionary review of the Board of Regents. To be clear, we would still review expulsions and suspensions from campus, but not suspensions from programs or majors. I know my committee colleagues join me in feeling that the review committee did an excellent job in its balancing act to balance the needs and the rights of students with the need to ensure safety, security, and adherence to the characteristics of each campus, community, and its mission. This was a huge and complicated undertaking, and we commend the review committee for their work. I want to especially acknowledge those members of the committee who attended our meeting yesterday, the chair, Jane Radu, and Ann Builder, both of whom are with us today, Madison Police Campus Chief Dale Burke, as well as our own Jan Shepard. I would now like to move Resolution 11 be revised as amended.
Second to the motion? It's been seconded. Any discussion? Regent Opgenorth.
I guess I just wanted to comment on to bring forward the comments that I had made yesterday to the committee, to the board today. I think that it's appropriate that we allow permissive language to be part of this document as we move it forward through this process. I understand that many of you have fears that all parties involved have not been consulted on this change to the document. However, I think that one of the most important issues is to consider is the externalities associated with smoking and secondhand smoke. Whether or not this permissive language is included now or later does not change the inherent danger of secondhand smoke to members of the campus community. It is my belief that if any campus is in pursuit of a smoking regulation, we should provide permissive language so that through shared governance, campuses can pursue a policy that attempts to minimize the perceived externalities of secondhand smoke. The permissive language recognizes the disparity among the campus communities and that it requires no campus to pursue a policy while giving those that wish to a means to implement and enforce the standards set by that campus. Thank you.
I believe that Chancellor Markey would like to briefly comment.
Okay. Just a couple comments. I'd like to congratulate Regent Opgenorth and the students that have been actively involved with this process for almost a year, and they've been very, very dynamic and very successful at Platteville. It's a good model, and we're making progress, and we feel good about that. And I know it's going to continue, and I think we'll see some more success. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chancellor. Regent Bartel?
Can I just ask a question? If I understand the rule as it's going to be submitted to the Legislative Council Rules Committee, in its present form, it allows a campus to establish a non-smoking rule campus-wide, but it doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. Is that correct?
You know what? I think Pat wants to respond to that. General Counsel Brady.
Can designate smoking areas. I mean, that was the original rule. That's what's currently on our books. The amendment that's in the code adds a second provision to that, which deals with residence hall smoking, which is now prohibited by statute. And so that amendment makes our rule consistent with state law. The issue at Platteville that came up was outdoor smoking. And there are two, I guess, sub-issues there. One is, under the policy as proposed by the campus wanted to impose a fine for outdoor smoking in certain areas. Our campuses do not have the authority to impose fines. That authority is reserved to the board through this process of rulemaking, and it's enforced under the citation process of Chapter 778 of the statutes. So that's one issue. And then there is a general broader issue whether even this board through a rule could limit outdoor smoking because state law deals with indoor smoking. And there's some question that we have not fully explored with regard to how far even this board could go in terms of banning outdoor smoking. What we talked about yesterday, I think, was the notion that certainly everybody is free to encourage people not to smoke all over the place, but there is no available fine that would address outdoor smoking at this point.
Okay. Could I just follow up then? So the decision of the Platteville campus to impose a non-smoking rule campus-wide, indoor and outdoor, is permitted under the rule, but it can't be enforced by citation. Is that what I heard?
Well, essentially, yeah. As far as the outdoor portion goes, it's not enforceable through a citation process.
Can I ask then, Chancellor Markey, do you think that it will be helpful on campus to have a rule that can't be enforced by a citation?
Yeah, I really do believe that it will be helpful. As people are so concerned about this issue that most are voluntarily stepping forward. There are exceptions where that enforcement would help with a few cases. But we're going to see a great deal of progress, and we already are, by the present plan that we have, that we can do.
Well, could I just say, Mr. President, that I think Regent Crane's suggestion that we continue to look at this subject, perhaps with a committee going forward and take into consideration the points that Kevin has made as we continue to review the rule in anticipation of the hearing, that we're going to have a public hearing on this, or a series of public hearings, I guess. So I think it makes sense to do that, and I hope we'll proceed in that way.
Good. Okay. Good. Thank you, Mark. Regent Connolly-Kiesler, and then Chancellor Wells.
Yes. I just would like a point of clarification from Pat. We have such a ban outside, so many feet outside a building. Now, I'm under the impression, that, and I agree with David, most of that is being voluntarily done. The fact that we have that policy, the community pretty much takes care of it. But I'm under the impression that we do have the authority to investigate a complaint for violation of a university policy and to invoke disciplinary action such as verbal reprimands or letter of reprimand and letter. And I just heard you say something that makes me wonder whether we even have that authority now. I know we don't have the authority to invoke a fine.
I'm not totally sure of all the aspects of all the policies on all the campuses, which is one reason I think some further conversation about what's going on out there is important. But there are, I know, a number of places where there are some smoking bans that extend beyond the building by some distance, usually because of air intake issues with regard to the building itself. And those, I think, you can work through on the fine issue. But with respect to can you enforce just a general prohibition outdoors everywhere in other ways, I think that is primarily a matter of voluntary compliance and encouragement on the part of people to discourage people from smoking as part of more of an educational effort in my estimation.
Still on this smoking issue, if we could, I'd like to recognize the Student Senate representative from UW Superior, Logan Campa. Logan is. Well, I'd recognize the president of the Stevens Point Student Senate also.
And non-students alike have to abide by. So I think another great thing to be thinking about within Chapter 18 here is the reservable outdoor spaces being added to the policies that they already have, making them banning smoking from those areas would be great, and also I think very easy to do and falling within the bounds of state law, from my understanding. So I just wanted to point that out in case that wasn't part of the discussion. I don't know if anybody else had anything. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the smoking ban issue? Regent Opgenorth.
I guess my last comment is about calling it a smoking ban, because I don't believe that it is a smoking ban. I believe that it's a smoking regulation, and I guess the reason why I say that is because it's an attempt to regulate the externalities imposed on other students who choose not to smoke on campus. So I would just like to point out that I don't think that we're looking at banning smoking anywhere, but rather regulating it so that we can provide the best campus community for the folks that reside there.
Good, thanks. That's an important clarification. Regent Vasquez, did you have a comment on this?
Not as much a comment as just a question. I just want to understand, in terms of our breadth of responsibility, I'm trying to find maybe an analogy. If a municipality owns a small park and says there is no smoking on our park, and it's open to the air and whatever, is that something that a municipality has the right, or is it only permitted to only if there's a building and within the confines of the building the municipality can say you can't smoke? And I guess that where I'm going with that is, if we in a sense own the campus property, buildings and the land, do we have the right, like a city would have the right to say, no, you can't smoke in our property, regardless of whether you're inside a building or on the sidewalk of our property or the grass of our property?
Pat, would you want to comment on that?
Up to speed on the authority of municipalities in the greater smoking area. I think it's quite a bit more complex. You know, they have their own statute, they have their own authority. I mean, towns, cities, and villages all can do different things. I'm not totally sure how they are affected by the state's law. I can tell you, however, that you know, we are subject to state law in this regard, and we derive our authority by statute for regulations here. So.
Any other discussion on the smoking restriction? Not ban. Or regulation, sir. Regent Connolly-Keesler on another matter.
On the students being expelled or suspended coming before the Board of Regents. Is that going to be a committee of regents? Is that the full board? And does anyone have any idea of how many students, I can't imagine it's many, but how many students a year or that is?
I don't know how many a year. We have a committee that would investigate reports, and then that committee would make a recommendation to the full board. Right. The current members of that committee are the chair, Brent Smith, Regent Opgenorth, Regent Spector, and Regent Womack. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion that is on the floor? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Regent Davis?
Finally, the committee heard the report of senior... Thank you all. Thank you. Finally, the committee heard the report of Senior Vice President Martin. She provided an update on Waukesha County's educational needs. We Can. You'll remember that in June we received a report from We Can, a coalition formed to bring together the business, county, and public higher education partners in the region. The coalition includes We Can, which has been pressing for several years now to increase baccalaureate and graduate degree holders or offerings and to enhance workforce development in Waukesha County. The report outlined the ways in which coalition members have worked together and issued a set of recommendations. In early July, President Riley, Chancellor Wilson, and Ron Singer met with We Can Board Chair Margaret Farrell, Jose Delgado, and Bronson Hazy, if I remember right. Kazi, I was right? Okay. Next steps will be to pursue bringing the UW-Platteville engineering program to UW-Waukesha. WeCan will also bring CEOs of engineering firms to the table to discuss local resources, needs, and commitments. Second, Rebecca shared with us the proposed timeline for completion of Plan 2008 and the rollout of the system's emerging diversity framework known as Inclusive Excellence. Let me just say that there's a lot going on in the diversity arena, led by Senior Vice President Martin, Interim Assistant Vice President Vicki Washington, their staffs, and the campuses. I'm not saying we've made the progress we need to make, but I am appreciative of the scope of the activity and the range of projects that are being worked on. Let me share a few highlights of Rebecca's review. The board will hear the final report of Plan 2008 in March 2009 at our one-day policy meeting. The Equity Scorecard project that we've heard so much about, in which there are now 10 UW institutions participating, is producing extraordinary work and data. There's a lot of excitement about the ways in which the data can help institutions move forward with progress for underserved students. Last spring, the UW system also made its first round of grants through a new Office of Academic Affairs grant program called Closing the Achievement Gap. The goal of the grant program is to develop and support programs that are effective in promoting institutional change to foster access and excellence for historically underrepresented populations. A total of $300,000 was made available to UW institutions for academic year 2008-09 to fund a variety of projects. The program proved so popular, 11 UW institutions applied, 7 of which were funded. Rebecca also noted that we would hear a report from the climate study at our December meeting. And though the information will cover difficult issues, we are responsible for knowing the issues and committing to addressing them. So, it's now time for the consent agenda. So other than the one we just did, the Education Committee approved only the minutes from the August meeting and Resolution 11E(2), which I now present as the consent agenda for your action. Resolution 11E(2) in approving the reappointments of Phil Farrell, David Kindig, and Greg Nice to the UW School of Medicine and Public Health Oversight and Advisory Committee of the Wisconsin Partnership Program.
To that motion? Seconded. Well, we're not going to remove one from the consent agenda.
Unless you don't want the minutes there. I mean, you can remove the minutes if you wanted to.
Although I would entertain, because we've had crazier motions. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That concludes my report, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Regent Davis. Now I'd like to call upon Regent Burmaster to present the resolution of appreciation to UW Stevens Point.
Whereas the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System recognizes UW Stevens Point's leadership in the growth agenda for Wisconsin, commending its Leading from the Center initiative to increase the number of graduates and to improve the homegrown business and industry environment of central Wisconsin. And whereas Chancellor Linda Bunnell is marshaling the resources of the university to help meet the needs of central Wisconsin through increased applied research activities in such critical areas as biofuel, aquaculture, nanotechnology, and geographic information systems, while encouraging students to become engaged global citizens. And whereas UW Stevens Point's presentations highlighted exciting new academic programs supporting the institution's mission and economic development, including the new Health Sciences program, which has student demand 5 times higher than initial expectations. And whereas the Regents appreciated learning more about UW Stevens Point's participation in the Voluntary System of Accountability, a nationwide effort to offer comparable university data to students and the public and to measure enhanced student learning. And whereas the Regents were refreshed by a brisk morning tour of the campus's beautiful 275-acre nature reserve, alight with fall color, and enjoyed world-class entertainment sponsored by the campus partnership with Century Insurance to promote the arts, which has inspired talented young people throughout the region. And whereas UW-Stevens Point is at the forefront of sustainability, fostering the emerging Wisconsin Institute for Sustainable Technology, a collaborative research, teaching, and outreach center that will act as an economic development center for the region, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System thanks Chancellor Linda Bunnell and the entire UW-Stevens Point community for graciously hosting this October 2008 meeting, showcasing the exciting educational, cultural, and economic activities emanating from the heart of Wisconsin. Thank you so much, Linda. You are such an innovative leader, and you've really captured the heart and the soul of this region, and you leave no detail unrecognized as you're implementing the vision of this great university. Thank you to you and all of your staff and faculty. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. No meeting of the complexity and importance of the Board of Regents, my fellow chancellors, and the provost is done without careful planning and outstanding leadership. There are so many people whom I would like to name who have been involved, from our food service to our groundskeepers to my staff. But there is one person who has been our leader and whom I want to recognize today. One person, its organizer, its imaginator. That's a word I've learned. If you have not read the last lecture, I really recommend that you read that book. Our imaginator, our organizer, deserves special recognition, and that's Stephen Ward. Now, Stephen is usually hiding from the limelight, and I ordered him to be here today so that I could recognize him, but I think he may have defied me. Stephen, stand up. The Learning from the Center Festival was Stephen's idea, as well as many, many others that you enjoyed. Stephen is our Executive Director for External Relations, and I want to recognize his leadership and his creativity, which we all enjoy. Before you leave today, I have a couple of gifts that I'd like to present, and Libby, thank you for that really beautiful, beautiful resolution. The first is to President Riley. Would you come forward? And since President Riley first came to this campus in November, shortly after you'd been chosen president, I had seen him in the bookstore at Superior buying socks. And I thought, this man needs socks. And so what could I give him as a token of his visit to our campus? So we gave him his first pair of UWSP running socks. And then he explained that he would use them to walk all over Madison, which he did. So, President Riley, thank you very much. Socks.
Slightly used.
Now let me explain. Our bookstore is entirely out of socks. We will not get any new ones until January, but let me promise you, in January you'll get 3 new pairs.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, the next gift I have is for you as regents and perhaps future generations of regents. Regent Bradley, if you would step forward on behalf of your colleagues to accept this gift. This is, I'll let you open it if you don't make too much noise while I'm talking. This is a print, a numbered print by Wisconsinite artist Ray Glockler. David tells me that's how to pronounce it. David Ward told me how to pronounce it. Ray Glockler, recently recognized as one of the world's leading woodcut engravers from right here in Wisconsin. Lest you think we have spent a lot of money on this, I want you to know that one of our faculty members found this in a garage sale in Marshfield. The book on Glockner, published by our own UW Press, in that book, the author notes the sharp eye for the ludicrous in American society and an abiding sense of humor with which Wisconsin artist Ray Glockler creates images that lampoon the inflated and celebrate the everyday. This print is titled The Regent. While I'm sure there is no intended connection between the subject of this work and the observation I just read on Ray Glockner, the piece is a wonderful caricature, but not, of course, of any of you who are here today. Glockner's work is beautiful, a great representation of the medium he helped keep alive through the end of the 20th century. All of us at Stevens Point and all of the other UW campuses, I know I speak for you, applaud each one of you for your service on the Board of Regents, for the mission of public higher education that you are working to keep alive. We've had such a wonderful time having you here these past few days. We welcome each of you back to our university anytime you want to come, and we hope that you will make it a point to visit us. But more importantly, thank you for all that you're doing in the service of higher education in Wisconsin. Nothing is more important in our state. The harder we all work together to advance the cause of relevant university experience, accessible to more and more students and more diverse students in our partnership and with Regents beyond, the better Wisconsin will be. This has been an honor for us. The campus is buzzing with excitement still, and your time with us has been most invigorating. Thank you once again, and please be safe on your travels home. And please enjoy The Regent.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Bunnell. I agree that this is not a caricature of any particular regent, although it's more like Regent Walsh than any other regent. But it's just... I would ask that the resolution presented by Regent Burmaster be recorded as being approved by acclamation. Any communications, petitions, or memorials? Any unfinished or additional business? Yes, Regent Spector. I don't think anybody received their test results back, correct?
Yeah.
You did receive them?
I've received a lot of things today.
Oh, you did?
I can assure you that you filled out the form properly. You will receive it. It takes a while for the bacteria to grow. So if bacteria was detected, we're waiting so that it grows and we can tell you exactly what it was.
Well, that must explain why I didn't get mine back yet.
We'll wait for the good news.
With your permission, how about